If you're going to build something from nothing, you've got to know what really works. I took a $1,000 loan and built a $5 billion business, and now I make smart investments in new businesses on Shark Tank. This is Barbara Corcoran, and you're listening to Business Unusual. On this episode, I'll tell you why you have to always trust your gut if you're going to be successful in business. But first, in a decade of investing on Shark Tank, I've noted that all the great entrepreneurs share the same common traits. Today, I'm going to tell you what those are. All great entrepreneurs have the exact same traits in common. They know that persistence is everything, and that getting past everyday obstacles is the name of the game. When I met Kim Daisy of Daisy Cakes on Shark Tank, she was a spectacular baker, and the other sharks were so busy eating her cake they forgot to make an offer. And so I scooped that business up. No one expected Daisy to get many orders for her homemade cakes when she aired on Shark Tank. We figured probably a few dozen. But to our surprise, she had over 8,000 orders to fulfill and no cakes to fill them with. So her phone was constantly busy, her website crashed with the demand, and I thought all was lost. But Daisy found a way to get over her obstacle and hot-wired her phone into my main office line and left me a message that I better find some people who talked like her with a southern accent to start taking cake orders. And we did. 3 of us for the next week and a half fulfilled all of Daisy's cake orders. Daisy knew how to get over an obstacle. One of the best businesses I have ever invested in is Grace & Lace that makes high-fashion women's clothing and sells it online. This is a business that's phenomenal, but born out of a very sad backstory. Melissa had learned to make baby socks while waiting for her first child to be born. Bedridden during a difficult pregnancy, Melissa taught herself how to knit pretty lace socks. When she and her husband lost the child, they were facing a tremendous life challenge. As they worked through this loss, it was Rick who suggested that they make something good of it, and they began the business Grace & Lace. It started as a simple sock company. Today it has over $12 million in sales. The key here is getting past obstacles is the name of the game. Every great salesperson by their nature is fiercely competitive. I invested in Cousin's Maine Lobster food truck, one truck in LA, that became a smash hit. After I met them on Shark Tank, they turned that into an empire of 36 food trucks and restaurants. My 2 partners, Jim and Sabin, are so competitive that all I have to do is mention that Luke's just opened another storefront in Manhattan, and their sales increased by 20%. They worked through the night to beat Luke to the punch. Why? They're successful. I'll tell you why. They're competitive. Every great entrepreneur is unreasonably optimistic and comfortable with risk. Everything they approach, they think they're going to win at, and of course they don't. One of the most successful recent companies I've invested in Shark Tank is the Comfy, a nice, cozy thing for everybody to wear when they're watching TV. It was such a hit on Shark Tank, we had over $1 million in sales on the first night. But here's the rub. The 2 guys that own the business showed up at Shark Tank with only 1 piece of merchandise. They should have never been on the show with just 1 garment. And then, on Shark Tank night, when they had over $1 million in orders, they couldn't fulfill it. What were these guys thinking? I'll tell you what they were thinking. They were extreme optimists. They just figured everything would work out, and guess what? It did. They were smart enough to send loving emails to all of their customers who were very happy to wait. Smart guys, but more than that, optimistic. This is Business Unusual with Barbara Corcoran. Here's today's tip. I learned early that you have to always trust your gut if you're going to be successful in business. I used to think it was a great sign when I would meet with one of my entrepreneurs and they would take careful notes and ask questions and listen to every little thing I would say. But then I learned a valuable lesson. Once I met with Cousin's Maine Lobster, one of my most profitable ventures, and the 2 guys, Jim and Sabin, who own the company, asked me so many questions and wrote down every answer I gave them. I was so flattered, of course, but then they walked out the door. and did exactly what they pleased. I've since learned that this is exactly what you want to see in an entrepreneur. People who ask a lot of questions, do a lot of listening, but in the end, always trust their gut. The entrepreneurs I've worked with over time who are so attentive and are looking for that magic answer from me, they never make money. So if you want to invest in a business or spot a great entrepreneur, I say, if they're asking too much and listening to what you have to say, run for the hills. You're going to lose your money. You've been listening to Business Unusual with me, Barbara Corcoran. Come back next week to hear more steps and missteps I took on the path to success on Business Unusual. Got a business question you want to ask me? Tweet it at Barbara Corcoran. I just might answer it on a future episode. Business Unusual is part of the iHeartRadio Podcast Network. Come back next week and be sure to follow Business Unusual on iHeartRadio or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.